Welcome back, everyone. Here's today's episode of Cabin Fever Astronomy with me, Diana Yoder. Today's episode is all about an asterism called the Winter Hexagon. The first section of our episode explains how to head out to your backyard and find today's subject. Today, we will be looking for a group of stars commonly known as the Winter Hexagon. To start, we once again have to face south and look for the brightest star in the night sky, Sirius. That is the first of 6 stars in this shape. Next, can you find the constellation Orion? We talked about it in an earlier episode. Orion is known for 3 stars right in a row that make up his belt. Betelgeuse and another bright star make up his shoulders, and then he has 2 bright knees. The knee on the right is known as Rigel. It is the brightest star in the constellation Orion, and this is the next star in our hexagon. I'll go ahead and mark the rest for you. All 6 of these stars are very bright, but Sirius and Rigel will most likely be the easiest 2 to find. From there, just keep looking for the brightest stars in the roughly a hexagon shape. Capella will be at the top of the hexagon and will be pretty high overhead. When we play connect the dots with the stars, it is pretty clear why we call this group the Winter Hexagon. It is definitely a 6-sided figure. However, this is not an official constellation, it's what we call an asterism. An asterism is just a well-known group of stars that a lot of people recognize and have given a common name. There isn't any cool story or background to go along with it, but if we look at each of the 6 stars in the Winter Hexagon, each one has their own constellation. Let's take a look at those. First, we have Sirius, which is part of the First, we have Sirius, which is part of the constellation Canis Major, or the Big Dog. We learned about this constellation in yesterday's episode of Cabin Fever Astronomy. Next, Rigel is part of the constellation Orion. We learned about this group 2 episodes ago. Aldebaran is the eye of Taurus the Bull. This star will appear a reddish color if you are stargazing from a nice, dark, clear space. Capella is one of the brightest stars in the night sky and is a part of the constellation Auriga the Herdsman. Pollux is the head of one of the twins in Gemini. Castor is the name of the star in the other twin's head. Finally, Procyon is part of a funny little constellation called Canis Minor, or the Little Dog. This constellation is so odd because it only has 2 bright stars. This means when you play connect the dots, you only get a line. I don't know about you, but I can come up with a lot of pictures that involve a line. And there you have it, all 6 constellations that help make up the asterism, the Winter Hexagon. Now that we know all about the Winter Hexagon, let's move on to our next section, Astrophysics Light. Today we will talk about why the Winter Hexagon is seen best during the winter. Once every year, the Earth orbits around the Sun. As it makes this journey, we on Earth are treated to a different view of the sky. When it is winter time for us here in the Northern Hemisphere, the Earth is on one side of the Sun. At night, we can see constellations like Orion or Taurus. However, when the Earth travels to the opposite side of the Sun is between us and Orion. That means the daylight blocks our view of these stars. Instead, we get to see constellations like Lyra the Harp. We also see changes throughout the night. As the Earth spins in place, we are treated to a different view of the sky from hour to hour. Here in the winter, Orion is high in the south from sunset until late in the evening. Let's watch Betelgeuse move. So find Betelgeuse in the night sky. Let's go on to 1 a.m. At 1 a.m., Betelgeuse is now low in the eastern sky, getting ready to set. Let's keep fast forwarding through time. Can you find the bright star Arcturus? It's in the upper left corner. Let's see how that changes. It moved from the west all the way across the southern sky and is starting to set in the east. The stars that we see early in the morning during the winter are going to be the stars you see at twilight in the summertime. Remember, it all has to do with the Earth rotating in place once a day and orbiting around the Sun once a year. Let's move on to our next section, Tour the Universe. Today, we will take a closer look at the star cluster, the Pleiades. For this, we have to head back to the constellation Taurus. On his back is a little fuzzy patch of stars. If you have a really clear night and really good eyes, you'll be able to see 7 individual points of light. That is why this group is often called the Seven Sisters. Let's take a closer look though. Here we can see much more detail. There are 5 extremely bright stars and many more beside them. There are actually over 1,000 stars in this group. The Pleiades are what we call an open star cluster. This means they were all born from the same nebula a long time ago. We learned earlier in the week that nebulas are regions of gas and dust in space that come together under the force of gravity to create stars. That is exactly what happened here. We can even still see some of the dust clouds spread out amongst these stars. So these stars are truly sister stars since they all came from the same stellar nursery about 100 million years ago. It is estimated that they will continue to be gravitationally bound to each other for another 250 million years or so. After that, they will disperse into the galaxy and go their separate ways. For today's Space Robots episode, we are going to talk about another object you might see in the Southwest on Friday night, the ISS, or International Space Station. So on Friday night, starting at about 8:54 p.m., the International Space Station should be visible crossing the sky from the southwest to the northeast. The ISS is only ever visible near sunrise or sunset due to how the sunlight reflects off the station. When the sun is just below the horizon, we have the best angle to see the light reflected back to us. So how exactly do you find it? Let's take a look. So at 8:54 p.m., you want to head outside with a good view of the northern sky. The ISS will appear low in the southwest and slowly begin to climb in the sky. After it reaches its max height, it will begin to set in the northeast. This is the opposite from the Sun and other astronomical objects because the ISS orbits the Earth the opposite direction from the way the Earth spins. This particular flyby will last about 6 minutes, which is longer than it's normally visible. So head outside and take advantage of this opportunity. It is completely free and only requires your eyes. And that concludes today's episode. If you have any questions, please ask them as a comment on our Facebook post. On Friday, we will be answering a selection of questions in our Cabin Fever Astronomy episode. Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to tune in again tomorrow morning for more science.